Your life is a story. Every chapter, every word, following Jesus, is an opportunity for you to leave a footprint, not only on this world, but in God's kingdom. It's time for you to start leaving footprints.
Good morning, Wildewood. You hardy souls that got all bundled up and came out in the cold, I'm proud of you. I'm glad that you're here. For those of you that are watching online, it's okay, you stayed home. But I love these people more. Was the cold coming in? Was it tough? It's winter, I know, but the Chiefs won. Just kind of low energy a little bit today, aren't you? Just kind of right there. I hope to kind of pump that up a little bit, not with Chiefs winning or weather stories, but really talking about what God is doing both in the kingdom universally, but also specifically here at Wildewood. We're starting a new sermon series today, which I called Leaving Footprints, because I've been thinking a lot lately about the people that have influenced my life and how I'm influencing others, and really asking the Spirit, is this what you want me to be doing anymore? Is this what you want me to be teaching? Is this the way that we're going to go? And this sermon series is probably a culmination of a number of months of study and prayer and talking. And so you're in on the ground floor, and I'm pretty excited about it, leaving footprints. Think about it for a moment. People who have fed into your life, transformed you in some way, left an impression upon you. I know there's a lot of people that did that as I was growing up. Friends of my family, Sunday school teachers, youth group leaders, high school teachers, and so forth. But when I got to college especially, it seemed like there was a lot of useful things I learned in college, especially from upperclassmen, but they weren't always good things. I'd been to college for maybe, 4 or 5 weeks when one of the upperclassmen came and got me. It was Saturday afternoon, and he said to me, "Dave has locked his door. He's inside his room and won't come out, and I want him to come out." We weren't scared that there was anything wrong going on or anything dangerous, but he just wanted his friend Dave to come out and not study anymore. So he said, "Here's what we're going to do." He said, "I'm going to teach you how to get somebody to come out of their room." I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "You take a manila envelope, and you open up one end, and then you fill it with shaving cream, as full as you can get it." Are you with me? And then you take it and you slide it under the door just a little bit, and then you know what you do next? You stomp on it. Who said that? Good job. You know what that's all about. You went to the same type of school I went to. Because when you stomp on it, what happens? From under the door, the shaving cream does what? Goes everywhere. Now, what he didn't tell me is that when you stomp on it, the next thing you're supposed to do is run. And I didn't do that at first. I just stood there. He's like, "Run, dude, run." So we took off running, and sure enough, Dave opened the door, and he came out. And he was mad. But that wasn't the only lesson I learned, because later that day, I got called to the dorm parents' office. And I thought, oh no. And they started talking about what we had done and why we had done it. And that's when I learned the second lesson of the day. The first lesson was, here's how you get somebody out of their room with shaving cream. The second thing was, don't use an envelope with your name printed on it. I would make a bad criminal. I would get arrested and nothing flat. Well, the truth here is, seriously, I did learn a lot of important things in college. And all through life, you have learned things from others too. I learned about the New Testament and the Old Testament, languages like Greek and Hebrew. I learned philosophy and theology and so forth. And as a matter of fact, just last month, we had Bill Miller here. He was the one who played piano for us that one Sunday. He was one of my professors that did a lot of amazing things in my eyes. And we did a couple revivals together in class together, and he was my piano teacher for a while. And he just really made an impression. He left footprints in my life, if you will. He made an impression upon me. Because I truly believe that many people will walk in and out of your life. But as Eleanor Roosevelt said, only true friends will leave footprints on your heart. Now, it's kind of touchy-feely, and I get that, but I like the concept of what it's talking about. Leaving footprints in somebody's life really means to have a lasting positive impact on somebody else. Oftentimes we do that through acts of kindness, mentorship, fellowships, simply being a supportive presence, especially leaving a noticeable mark in their life after you're gone, when they remember what you've said or what you have done or somehow you've helped them. And it signifies a meaningful connection, not only between the two of you, but a connection of your influence upon their journey. Somehow their life is different, is changed because you were part of it or they were part of your life. Do you know what I'm talking about? Are you thinking of somebody right now? I hope so, because that's what I want you to think. But another quote about leaving footprints comes not from Eleanor Roosevelt, but from somebody named Arnott Shepard, who said this: if you want to leave a footprint in somebody else's life, don't drag your feet. What does it mean to drag your feet? Well, you could do that literally. I did that when I was a kid. I shuffled my feet a lot for some reason, and my mom was driven absolutely crazy about this. Talk about making an impression. She'd say, stop dragging your feet or stop shuffling your feet. Drove her crazy with that. And looking back on it, I think I may have done that just to drive her crazy. But it also, when you say that to somebody, stop dragging your feet, what you're implying is that they're being lazy or they're procrastinating. They're not stepping up to the plate. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're putting it off to a different time or a later time. And I use the word lazy because as I look around at all the resources that God has given us, the education we have, the talents and the skills, the camaraderie, when I look around and see that everything that God has given us, right, I wonder, are we using it to its fullest extent? I love seeing the pictures that Robin was showing us and the remodeling that's happened, and God has given us a tool in our building that we're going to use in incredible ways. But are we using it to its fullest extent? Part of all of this is that we want to be able to have space where people can learn and grow and interact, and we want to have our donuts back, right? Not because we want to have donuts as much as we want to have the fellowship, the relationship with others. But is it truly enough? Because I believe that God has placed Wildewood, placed you and I, literally placed us here, chosen us to live at this crossroads of time and place. And in this new year, I don't want to waste one bit of it. I don't want to drag my feet on any of it. As a matter of fact, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 16, you can look it up, but you don't have to. Let me just tell it to you. Paul admonishes us, he commands us, make the most of every opportunity. So I'm going to ask you just to, within yourself, just between you and God probably, just make that commitment, that agreement, that promise that you will say, God, whatever you have for me in this coming year, I want to be ready for it. I want to make the most out of every opportunity, every relationship, every possible thing that I can do. Just pray that prayer just silently, would you? Because I think that this is what leaving footprints is going to be about. For the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about what does it mean to make the most out of every opportunity. And sometimes those opportunities are things that we maybe haven't thought of before that have happened in the past that are still happening again. For instance, there were two events that happened in 1969. Anybody here was alive in 1969? Some of you. Go ahead, you can admit it. I was 4 years old. And two things happened relatively close that I think changed the world in so many ways and are still affecting us today, right? The first one was, this famous footprint. Not on Earth, but rather, where's the footprint? It's on the moon. Neil Armstrong was the first man to step foot on the moon. One small step for man, he said, and one giant leap for mankind. But not only was he doing the first step on the moon, but it was Buzz Aldrin that said, hey, I should take a picture of the first footstep on the moon. So they worked together. They impressed each other to give us this amazing shot. Now, only 12 people total have walked on the moon. So 10 other people followed in their footsteps all the way there. Now, maybe it's going to happen again. Maybe NASA's taking humanity back to the moon, whatever. But the truth is that this was an important time. The space program, I believe, unified and inspired not just the United States, but the world. And it gave us a focus to reach for the stars, but even more than that, if you go back and read the articles, the books, the sermons, the lessons that were being taught in churches around the world, you find that many people were turning to worship the Creator in ways that they never had before. Because suddenly we had our vision go from the earth to the moon, to the stars beyond. But it was at that very same time that many people felt inspired and excited and connected to God, that many other people felt like they didn't have a purpose, didn't have direction. They felt lost. Because while man was landing on the moon in late July 1969, in the middle of August, just a few weeks later, was Woodstock, the music festival in New York. Anybody remember that? All the bands came together, and it was a time of unrest, of confusion, and inspiration in a different way. Somebody that was a young man that was going to Woodstock wrote in his journal, and it later got published, and he wrote this: listen, people are nowhere are coming here because there's people they think are somewhere. Let me say that again. People that are nowhere are coming here because there's people they think are somewhere. So everybody's really looking for some kind of answer where there really isn't one. It's like people are really lost, I think. This young man summarized what was going on, that thousands of people, mainly young people, went to Woodstock, New York, to a music festival looking for meaning, looking for that impression, that footprint, that connection to somebody or something else. As a matter of fact, it was Jerry Reed who wrote the song called Guitar Man, made famous by the band named Bread, that kind of summarized what we've all done at one point in our life or another. The lyrics say this: then you listen to the music and you like to sing along. You want to get the meaning out of each and every song. Then you find yourself a message and some words to call your own, and then you take them home. Tell me you haven't listened to a song at some point and said, that singer-songwriter has absolutely captured how I feel. Well, there's some truth in that. And you play it over and over again, or you write down the lyrics. You want to remember them. That's a favorite song. It's not just about the music style, although that has something to do with it. It's more about the content of the words, because we're always looking for that teaching, that answer, that connection. And we do that most often when we feel lost. That's going to be a key word in our study of this topic, being lost and being found. It's often because we have no sense of direction, the difference between being lost and being found. Let me show you this slide, because I think that there are two other words I want to use here. Oftentimes when we're asking, why am I here, or what am I to do, what does it mean to make the most out of every opportunity, like we said in Ephesians 5, we find ourselves being lost or found. Well, the other two words are being insiders and outsiders. Let me explain what I mean by that, especially in our time. How many of you grew up in a Christian home or going to church off and on, at least occasionally? How many of you? Can I see? Look around the room. You see how many of us have done that? Most of us, if not all of us, say we came from some sort of Christian background, some sort of Christian teaching. But the truth is that many people who we knew were not living out a Christian life, so they knew what was right, but they were rebelling against it. And that's why most of my life, churches have done things called revivals or things like that. Crusades from Billy Graham and so forth. And who they were speaking to is people who had grown up in some way connected to God through the church or other Christians. The impression upon their life was of a Judeo-Christian ethic. They knew what was right or what was wrong, so being lost and found was either living out my Christian life or rebelling against it. And so these revivals and crusades and things were designed to call people back to what they already knew. So we were Christian or we were not acting like it, and so that was the lost and found. But the truth is, I think that what's happening now is that we have more and more people in our neighborhoods, our friend groups, our work spaces, and so forth, our families, that have no background in the church. The percentage of people that have no connection to the Bible or Jesus or God or prayer or any Christian thing is growing exponentially every single year. So lost and found looks different and much more like it did in the first century is how it looks today. And I think Jesus is very concerned about those who are lost. I know that very simply because in Luke chapter 19, verse 10, we read this: for the Son of Man came to seek and to save what? What was lost. Does God love those who are in the center of his will? those who are involved in the church and living out their Christian life, does God love them? Yes. Does God love those who had a Christian life, a Christian connection, but have gotten away from it, who are in rebellion, who have been backslidden? Does Jesus love them? Of course. But does Jesus also care about and is calling to those who had no interaction with the church, with Christ, with the Spirit, with prayer, and so forth? And the answer, of course, there is yes again. But the point here is that the lost now that I'm talking about isn't so much those who are rebellious as much as I would say they are uninformed. And they're living lives of sadness, of loneliness, because they're far from God and they're looking for someone to follow. So here's what I want you to understand is that when you see somebody or we identify somebody who is lost, meaning that they're not connected to God, that's really a good thing. Okay, so think about it like this. Because when you say something is lost, that means it has two things. It has a purpose and it has value. When you lose your car keys, does your car keys have a purpose? Not up and down like this, right? Because your car keys' purpose is what? Start your car. You can't start your car without the keys. Too often in my life, I've gotten out to the garage, got in the car, put my seatbelt on, opened the garage door only to remember what? My keys are inside. Ugh. They were lost, and they're found. I will go get them because they have a purpose. But they also have value. Okay? The value is that it gives me something in life. It allows me to do something in life. Okay? So if someone is lost, I want them to understand that they have both purpose and value to the Creator of the world, and that Jesus was very concerned about the lost. And I want to have the same concern as Christ. I want to be the same path as Him, because too often we are too concerned, too connected to those who are in the church, those who are found, rather than those who are lost. So looking today at the whole chapter of Luke, chapter 15, I want you to understand why some people call this the lost chapter. You may want to turn there. We won't have time to look at every verse, but we're going to reference it, and I have some verses I'll share with you. Verses 1 and 2 really lay out the whole system here, though. It says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. So who came to do what? The tax collectors and the sinners, those who I would say are lost, who are far from God, have come because they want to hear Jesus. They want Him to make an impression upon their life. They want Him to leave some footprints in their day. But notice what verse 2 says. But the Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. This is not a positive thing. As a matter of fact, you can read that passage with a little bit of a sneer, can't you? The Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, this man, meaning Jesus, welcomes sinners, and he even what? Gross. Disgusting. Why would he do that? Because they're concerned about the insiders and outsiders too, but they want to be counted amongst the insiders, taking care of ourselves and blessing ourselves, making things comfortable for us. And those who are outside, we don't care about them, keep them on the outside. No, when we start talking about leaving footprints, the truth is that we want to have the same feeling that Jesus has when we were told in Luke 19 that Jesus came to seek and to save the who? The lost. So in this passage, we have the sinners and the tax collectors, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, and who is lost? All of them. Thank you, very good. All of them are. And sometimes I look in the mirror and say, am I part of the lost? Because I'm taking too much time and effort to take care of those who are on the inside and never thinking about those who are on the outside. See, I want to make the most of every opportunity, so I want to leave footprints in the right places. I want to do the right things in order to entice other people to come into the kingdom to where we seek and save the lost like Jesus did, whether they're in the kingdom or not. And so Jesus, in trying to explain this to us, because sometimes we're kind of dense, gives us 3 stories about things that are lost. And I wish we had more time. We'll come back to this later, but I want you to see what Jesus is saying at the very surface as we lay out the beginning of this whole process. The first story that he tells is about a shepherd who has 100 sheep. Shepherds were pretty low-class people to begin with, but he is called a master shepherd in some translations. He was the boss of the shepherds, and he had a pretty large flock. 100 was a lot back in the day. I grew up on a farm with sheep for a while, and this is what I can tell you. Sheep are stupid. There's nothing else that you can say. Sheep are just dumb. They get themselves into all kinds of situations. Sometimes when it was raining, do you know what we needed to do in the rain? We had to go out in the muddy corral and make the sheep go inside the building, because what they would do is they would stand outside in the rain and get so sopping wet that they couldn't move. They would sometimes fall over in the mud because they weren't smart enough to get in out of the rain. You know that phrase where it says, "Are you too dumb to even know when to come in out of the rain?" That's talking about sheep. I kid you not. So this master shepherd has how many sheep? 100. He's constantly counting to make sure he has them all, because remember, sheep are stupid, and sheep will follow and get into things and get into trouble. And one day he counted 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. Oh no, one of my sheep is gone. Now, it would be pretty common, it would seem, to say, well, I have 99 sheep to protect and one that is missing, and so I'm just going to let it go. That sheep is too stupid to live, we might think. But remember, Jesus is trying to teach us that he came to seek and to save that which was lost. And what is lost in this story? The sheep. And so the shepherd in his story leaves the 99, basically says, take care of yourselves while I go looking for the one. Because the value is in finding the one. But it's not just in finding the one, which he does. It's not just in bringing it home, this rebellious sheep, which he also does. But he's also speaking not only to the sinners and the tax collectors, who are the ones who are lost, that he wants to bring them into the kingdom, but he's also talking to the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. He's talking to you and I who are in the church, and he says, here's what you do when somebody who was lost and is now found. He says he calls his friends and neighbors together, and he says, rejoice with me. I have found my lost sheep. I tell you, in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner that repents than over 99 persons who do not need to repent. It's better to go out and to find the lost and to bring them home than to count how many people we have in the room. Now, I know we talk about attendance and we talk about growing the church and so forth, and sometimes we have this American mentality that things can only be successful if they're getting bigger all the time. I don't believe that to be true. But what I do believe to be true is that we want to be like Jesus, that we are constantly aware of those who are lost and wanting to bring them home so that we can rejoice with the shepherd. Rejoice with the one who has given us this task, making the most out of every opportunity as we seek and save the lost. And we're going to be talking about how to do that, how to use your life, your smarts, your experiences, your testimony, and so forth to bring others home. Because the second story that he tells us isn't about a lost sheep, but rather it's about a lost coin. A very poor woman, I'm assuming that she's poor because she only has 10 coins, and she's sweeping her floor, which means she probably has a dirt floor. People who are very poor have dirt floors, and they don't want to lose money, and she's looking for one coin. Even in our poverty, even in our lack of, God is pulling for us to find the blessing, the prosperity, and so forth. When she finds the coin, notice what it says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there's rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. So finding a lost soul now includes repentance. Because when you're lost, you're doing what? You're going the wrong way. When you're lost, you're doing what? You're going the wrong way. And lost people are doing that. You and I have experienced that. We have repented. We've said, God, I shouldn't have done this. I should have done this. I shouldn't have gone there. I should have gone here. I shouldn't be in that relationship. I should be in this relationship. That's repentance. He says, rejoice with me when that happens, because this is what happens with sheep because they're stupid and coins because they're small. But then the third story he gives us is about the loss of not one son, but two. The story of the prodigal son, as we oftentimes call it, is about a father who has at least two sons. And the one son, the younger one, goes to his father and says, Dad, I wish, Dad, I just want to tell you that I'm dreaming about the day when, you're dead. What? Yeah, I want you to be dead, but since you're not, can I just have my inheritance now anyway? I'll just take my half of the farm and my half of the sheep and my half of the cattle and my half of the money, and I'm just going to go and separate myself from you and live whatever kind of life I want to live. Is that boy lost? He's fixing to get lost. So what does the father do? He says, here's the money, go get lost. And he does. Now, we like the story because he goes to town, he spends his money on wine, women, and song. We know the story, right? He loses it all. He loses his friends. He loses any influence or power. He's living with the pigs. He's eating their slop. And he says, I want to go home because at least in my father's house, I could be a servant treated better than this. So he comes home, which means he's repenting, and the father welcomes him home. But you see, that son is the outsider. He's the one that's in rebellion to the father, and the father's impact upon him later brought him home. But it's the second son that I want to talk about today. The second son who stayed at home. The second son who was the insider, who was just as lost as the other son, only he didn't go anywhere. He got lost right in the midst of what was happening, and people thought he was a good guy, thought he was doing it right, when he was far, far, far from the Father, far from God, we would say. And he is not happy that his brothers come home or been reinstated to the family. The jealousy has set in. I understand jealousy because I have a Facebook account. Have you ever felt like that? How come I didn't get invited to that party? How come they didn't contact me about this? Why do their kids look so much better than my kids? Right? When we start comparing and contrasting, then we get into that jealousy place. And this son was the same way. How come I've never had a party? You never killed a fatted calf for me and my friends. To which the father replies, my son, the father speaking, my son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is now alive. He was lost, but now is found. We're not told that son ever came home, so to speak. We're not told what happened to him. Jesus leaves the story open because the end of the story is really up to us. Are we like that son to where we're going to use our life to make the most of every opportunity to reach out to the lost and bring them home and rejoice over that, as opposed to scolding, directing, holding them out, or holding them at arm's length? Because you see, I think we need to understand what it means to be lost again before we can really have an impact on those around us who are. In the Proverbs, we read this one where it says, there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. See, being lost can be fun. Sin has its benefits. We like it for a while. And we need to understand that most or many people who are lost are not ready to give up that lifestyle because they don't understand how devastatingly dangerous it is for them to go through that. So we want to make impressions along the way using everything that we have. Just yesterday I was talking to a friend of mine who doesn't go to church here at Wildewood, goes to church somewhere else. But we're friends and we talk quite often. And every Saturday morning he gets together with 5 other guys and they have some breakfast and they pray together and they study. Well, he told me that yesterday, Saturday, in the morning at 6:30, it was his job to be bringing the lesson, and he totally forgot about it. His life has been overwhelming. He hadn't been in the scripture for a long time, hadn't been praying. So he got up at 5 a.m. to have something to talk to these guys about. Very disingenuous, or didn't really care, was really kind of frustrated he had to do this, but he said yes. And as he sat in the chair, he grabbed his Bible and he just threw it open and said, okay, Jesus, show me what you want me to talk about. When he noticed that across from him, the chair was pulled out from the table a little bit as if somebody was sitting there, but there was nobody there. His wife and kids were asleep upstairs. And he suddenly had this sense of the presence of Jesus sitting across the table from him. Never thought about that before. If I truly believe that Jesus is always with me, he's with me right now. He's with me in the car when I'm driving, when I'm on the phone at work, when I'm parenting my children or spending time with my wife. And the more he thought about that, and the more he started reading Scripture and seeing Jesus say things like, I will be with you always, even to the end of the age, it began to transform him. And he started thinking about the mentors that had fed into his life, and the teachers that he had listened to, and the sermons that he had heard. And it was just amazing for him to say, all these people are pouring into me, and how far away from God have I gotten? How can I say to my best friend, You just sit over there and be quiet while I do what I want to do. And the more he kept talking and talking and talking and telling me the story, and at one point I'm looking at my watch and I'm thinking, you've been nonstop talking for an hour, dude. He said, I can't stop talking about it. You see, he was lost, and Jesus found him. And so we're going to talk more about what that means. So over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about what it means to be searching out for the lost, how they view the world differently than we do, and how we can use our lives and our testimonies to help them to be found so that we can rejoice. As we're coming up to the opening of our new classrooms and cafe, as we're coming to our Easter time, knowing how to influence us. But also, if you want to add to that teaching, on Wednesday nights, starting this Wednesday, we have 2 classes that you might be interested in. Robin's going to be leading one on the book of Acts, talking about what is the church community as it was originally designed in the 1st century. How can we live in community with one another in the 21st century? And then secondly, Amy and I will be teaching a class on this book called Contagious Faith by Mark Middleberg. How do I take who I am and leave these footprints to lead people to Christ? There are 5 different ways that we're going to be learning to do that, from friendship building to selfless serving, to story sharing, to giving reasons why I believe what I believe, and then truth telling. How do you speak truth to people that are ready to hear it? And so over the next 6 weeks, we're going to be studying on Wednesday nights, starting at 6:30, how to share our faith and how to leave breadcrumbs, footprints, to lead people through the wilderness and back to the kingdom.